The University of Scranton Center for Ethics and Excellence in Public Service is proud to produce this series of interviews with 2025 Scranton City Council candidates. All 6 candidates who made it onto the ballot were invited to participate. 5 of them accepted our invitation. And today, I'm joined by Tom Schuster, who is running as a Democrat. Welcome, Tom.
Thank you very much. As we just said, I'm Tom Schuster. I'm running as a Democratic nominee for Scranton City Council. I'm running for a re-election. I've served the city of Scranton for 5 years on council. Very proud of each moment and very honored to serve the city of Scranton. I'd like to start off by using a quote or a comment from one of my colleagues, Mr. McAndrew, who says, I do not work for the individuals in City Hall, but I work for everyone outside of City Hall. And what that means is legislation comes down from the city administration, and it's my obligation to question that legislation, to tease out the info there so the public gains the knowledge that the council has, so decisions can be made, and we try to get feedback from the public, or at least I try to get feedback from the public so we can make our decisions. Every week on City Council, I push for transparency, and that happened this week. And one of the other reasons I'm running is for efficient use of taxpayer funds. In the city of Scranton, we've had issues where the school district was almost at the verge of receivership. Since I was a child, since 1992, the city has been in distress status. And when I first came into politics, finance was always the big item that was there. And it was something that everyone in the city was always concerned about. I will say I was on the Scranton School Board when I took office, and on the Scranton School Board, the school district was $34 million in debt. When I left, the finances were much better than that, and right now the city has a absolutely flush balance on their books. The city of Scranton left Act 47 distress status in 2023, and I'd like to say some of my actions and some of my financial discipline helped to move the city out of distress status. So I will say the finances are going to be my top priority always. As well as we need to start getting back into our neighborhoods. We're doing a lot of revitalization in downtown, but some of our neighborhoods are getting put on the back burner. So I'm seeking re-election to continue some of the things I've done so far. I have a pretty solid record, and I'd like to continue to work on keeping the city out of, keeping our financial health correct, getting back into our neighborhoods, and we can move on to the next question.
Yes, thank you, Tom. Our first question. The cost of living keeps going up, while many Scranton residents struggle with stagnant wages and/or limited job opportunities. Do you have a plan to attract new businesses, good-paying jobs, and/or to help local businesses grow?
I would say yeah. So as I said before, I was on the school board, and I'm also been on council for the last 5 years. And my thing is always going to be finances. If the city's financial health is in order, some of these things are going to occur. When it comes to efficient use of taxpayer funds, if we're efficiently using taxpayer funds, we don't have to constantly go back to the resident to raise taxes. Now, once in a while, minute tax increases are going to happen because of the cost of living, because of inflation, things like that. But when I got onto council in 2020, the first budget I passed was the 2021 budget. We, as a council, made over 100 amendments to that budget, which scaled back salaries, it scaled back expenditures. In 2022, we also did over 90 amendments that scaled back expenditures. We did not do a tax increase in 2021. We did not do one in 2022. In 2023, when one of my opponents gets on council, we then raised taxes in 2023. What was presented from the city administration was a 3.5% tax increase. Discussion was had, and some of the pushback I had got that tax increase from 3.5 to 3% tax increase, but I voted against that tax increase because it was for more positions in city. It was expanding city government, and I didn't feel it was an efficient use of those fundings. In 2024, we have the same thing which occurs. Again, my opponent, this is his second year on city council, he raises taxes again. There was a 3% tax increase that was put on the table. Discussion is had, some pushback from some council members, and we get that tax increase to 2%. So some of the actions, again, that I've done decrease that tax increase from 3% to 2%. However, the tax increase still passed. I voted against it. And that year, I actually made amendments. I put forth my own amendments that balanced the budget, kept city services at the level they were at, and had a 0% tax increase. Now we get into 2025, and this individual raises his salary by 44%.
Okay. On to our next.
To go with that, if we efficiently use taxpayer funds and we have flush city balances, we could do things like grant programs to help small businesses, which the city is doing right now with the way our finances are. We could also get into our licensing, inspections, permits, and maybe get rid of some of that red tape that's there that is a hindrance to businesses and individuals that are trying to invest in the city.
Okay.
Thank
On to our next question. Some Scranton residents seem to be far more concerned about crime than others. How concerned should residents be? And what would you recommend that the city do to address crime?
Crime is going to be something that we should all be, it should all be a concern, and the citizens are right to be concerned about crime. We don't want to see it go too far. On council, we've made many investments in our Scranton Police Department. You'll see the new fleet of vehicles that's out there, the nice white vehicles. We've purchased a new fleet of vehicles. We purchased body cams. We purchased computer systems. So to answer this question is to give the police department the tools they need to actively fight crime, which those investments are occurring. I will say the district attorney's office is doing a great job of getting guns and drugs off of the streets. And one thing I do think to fight crime here is the Scranton Police Department does have a good relationship with the district attorney's office as well as the state police. And a lot of times when you read a newspaper article, you're going to see district attorney's office with Lackawanna County Sheriff's, state police with the help of Scranton Police Department. I think one thing that the city administration needs to do is allow our officers to get more involved. They are involved and there is a good relationship there, but allow them to get more involved and fight crime the way they should, and to, again, not be a hindrance to their duties. I think making those investments and allowing those officers to do what they need to do is going to help fight crime in our city of Scranton.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, Scranton has an aging housing market and, arguably, a shortage of affordable homes and apartments. What specific policies would you support to improve housing quality and affordability for young people, working families, and or seniors?
Yeah, a majority of the housing stock in Scranton is approaching 100 years. To start with some of the worst case scenarios, there's budget line items in there for demo projects in the city. We could expand that somewhat to demo some of the more serious housing structures that need to come down. But the goal is to get people into homes, rehab these homes, and increase our tax base. So that's really what we want to do. The city is doing some, now I'm going to go back to the finances again. We have ARPA funds right now that were given to us by the federal government, and right now the city coffers look pretty good. And we're making investments into rehabbing some of these homes and giving grant money towards that. The city just recently revitalized the Scranton Redevelopment Authority, and this is something that we're seeing in Pittston. The city of Pittston is doing a lot of revitalization. The city is looking great, and they're using their redevelopment authority to do that. Scranton does need to do that. We've hired a director. I don't really know what the SRA is doing right now, but if we were going to efficiently use them, that's the mode that we could turn around some of these houses, get more of these houses that maybe are abandoned or blighted back into being rented, back into having individuals in them, and back into improving our neighborhoods with the upkeep of these homes.
Okay, thank you. Our next question is, property taxes have been rising faster than incomes for many residents. Can Scranton balance the city's budget without passing along an even greater financial burden onto residents? If so, how?
So I'm going to say yes. As I said, in 2024, I proposed my own budget, and I took a look at our expenditures, and I looked at the gap in money that we needed, and I reduced those expenditures to balance the budget without a tax increase. 2025, through proactive budgeting, we don't have a tax increase this year, and that's part of council doing its job. And I will say, when council does its job, the people are more satisfied. Going back to that 2021, 2022 budget, the council and the mayor struggled. They were at odds with each other, but each of them did their job. The administration proposed the budget, and council pushed back with amendments. The citizens in that year were a lot happier with the budget, and then the same thing occurred in 2022. So when we do the function that we're here to do, it provides something for the residents that they're more happy with. They get more input on it, more input occurs, and the results end up being something that's positive. There is an area in there to not increase taxes. As I said, when it comes to inflation, when it comes to the cost of living rising, there may be small incremental tax increases that are needed to keep up with that. If we efficiently use our money and we proactively budget, we shouldn't have to have any high jumps like we saw with the 33% county increase that occurred. They could be easier managed and easier for the citizens to afford if we do it smaller and incrementally. But the thing that I fear is the school district and the city have a habit sometimes of going on spending sprees. As we move into 2026, the ARPA funds are going to be coming to an end. ARPA funds were received in 2022. The ARPA plan was voted on in 2022. These things are earmarked for 25, 26, 27. Those funds are going to start coming to an end, and what we need to do is realize and identify that these funds are coming to an end, and we have to budget with that in mind and continue that budgeting as we move into 2027, 2028 to keep expenditures in the city down and keep more money in our residents' pockets. And that's what I've been doing since I've been on council, and that's what I plan to do into the future.
Okay, thank you. Our next question. One of the most divisive issues in the country involves the presence of ICE agents and National Guard troops in American cities. If ICE or the National Guard arrives in Scranton, what should the city say and do? What should law enforcement say and do? And what should Scranton residents say and do?
This question here I don't think is really relevant to a municipal city council race. So when we talked about getting some pushback from the candidate, this is one of these questions that you're going to get pushback from the candidate. City council receives a budget from the mayor. We pass that budget from the mayor. We work on municipal actions, and this is something that isn't one of them. So I feel like it's a question that shouldn't be even in this interview process.
Okay, then our last question is, finally, are there any additional issues that are important to you, your campaign, or the city of Scranton that we have not already discussed? If so, please feel free to use our final 2 minutes to share your ideas, concerns, or proposals about these issues.
Thank you very much. As I said just before this, or just prior to this, the ARPA funds that we received from the federal government are going to be coming to an end. Those funds were earmarked for projects. What I want to see happen is I want to see these projects completed, and I want to make sure that we're proactively budgeting for when these funds are done. We've exited Act 47 recovery. I want to stay that way, and I want to continue to use proactive budgeting so we could keep our taxes down. As I said, I've always held the line on taxes. While on council, I've never voted to increase your taxes, and I haven't been just a no just for the sake of no. When I came to the table with my no, I came with my amendments to those budgets and with my ideas. So that's something we need to get these projects finished. Next thing is stormwater. $24 to $25 million is being spent on stormwater after the sale of the Scranton Sewer Authority. It's Scranton's obligation to take on our stormwater. So we have made an investment in upgrading Scranton stormwater. It's $24 to $25 million. These projects need to get done. Within a month of being on city council, I took the mayor for a tour of Kaiser Valley. I brought her from the turnpike all the way to the pump house on Merrifield and Cameron Avenue, and showed her all the areas where, there was going to be failing infrastructure and there was going to be flooding that occurred. 3 years later, we have the floods that devastated many families in that area and in North Scranton. And these flood projects, which are just starting now, need to be completed. And I want to continue my tenure on city council to make sure that these projects are completed. I want to continue my tenure on council to make sure that we're proactively budgeting and we're holding the line on taxes. And these are the things that I'm going to continue to do. We need to get back into our neighborhoods, which are being put on the back burner. And I do believe we can budget in the city of Scranton, keeping the services that we have, the city safety services, police and fire, DPW. We can keep these services while effectively using taxpayer money without having to come back to the taxpayer time and time again. So I would like to continue with that. I've done it so far, and the promises I've made in campaigns, I've kept them straight on through. And I would appreciate your support this November 4th in the general election. If you could please give a vote for Tom Schuster for City Council.
Okay. Thank you, Tom. Again, Tom Schuster is running for one of the 3 open Scranton City Council seats. Please remember to vote on November 4th.